Good evening to all of you. Let's just spend a couple of minutes in silence and then we'll take questions and comments and sharings. The teaching of Advaita begins and ends with one simple statement: consciousness is all there is. It begins with that and then it ends with that. There's actually nothing more to it. If that one consciousness is known, then everything becomes known. Even the ego mind that troubles us, haunts us so much, is an arising in consciousness. While the mind can come and go, thoughts can come and go, feelings, sensations can come and go, but consciousness remains ever present. And the only way to have a direct experience is to experience it as here and now. So, if you have any questions or anything to share, please feel free to. You can just type in the chat box and I'll respond to that. Generally, when the mind is happy, there is nothing to ask as such. Sometimes one does feel like sharing, but there's nothing to ask. But still, it's okay to ask anything or share anything. I feel that sharings are much more powerful because when people share things, they generally share from their heart. So they put the entire emotion into that sharing, which can be extremely helpful to others. So there is one question. If I understand correctly, you mentioned in one of your videos being aware of awareness is also an impermanence activity. Can you please explain more? Yes, so when the mind is entirely quiet and all there is being, that is not an that is the ground basically. That is the ground of all experiential awareness. But when the mind moves, as in when you identify anything as being aware of, that is an activity. So the impermanence that is being spoken about here is of the object. The object comes in appearance and then moves out of appearance. So the context here may be that when we try to objectify being or try to limit being as an object of awareness. Let's say, for example, if I'm given a fancy word like consciousness or Brahman, then I immediately objectify it as awareness, or I may even call it being aware of the awareness. But even beyond that, is something that needs to be, I won't say understood, but from where it arises. At some point, the words just fail. Even if I try to explain it, it's actually quite difficult because it is complete void, like complete nothingness. And I can only give a conceptual explanation, which is that there is an arising of a vertical thought, I am, which is the awareness of being aware, or being, which is the pure knowing. And the movement of that being creates the awareness of objects. I am this, I am that. But I generally restrict myself only to being because it is easy to understand that conceptually. I hope that answers the question. So Aman says, how to choose profession? I am third year engineering student. Choose a profession based on your present understanding. Because you cannot do anything else. Whatever appeals to you in this moment, choose that. And make a choice with this understanding that whatever you choose now, with whatever understanding you have, may not be the best choice, so as to speak, in life, but it will teach you something. Either it will teach you what works or it will teach you what does not work. So, whatever understanding you have as of now, whatever you think is your goal, act on that, take action on that, and do whatever you feel like doing at this point. Thank you, Kanda. Thank you. Sometimes I just fail miserably to explain things. And that's why I try to make things as simple as possible. Because, the nature of mind is such that it wants to entangle. So it wants to imagine a state beyond a state, you know, and we get so caught up in that. But for me, the awakening of the heart, the awakening of compassion, love, those are more important things than conceptual understanding of awareness. Because conceptually, we are very limited. And when there is true understanding, there is actually no, there is actually nothing to say then. There is only pure stillness, just like as one experiences in deep sleep. Because in deep sleep, there is no contemplation on being or aware of being. There is simply the being, the I in all its purity. When you bring your attention here, just here, when I say here, I mean when the thought is not interjected as yet. There is actually nothing. There is nothing at all. Just this. But this is so vast, so infinite, that it can take any infinite number of arisings. It is vast beyond imagination, vast beyond conceptualization. And that is one reason why I don't use words like Chaitanyam or Brahman, or I just refer to it as consciousness, pure consciousness, in an attempt to simplify it. Although I fail miserably in that because it is very difficult to simplify this. So the question is, this understanding, I am pure consciousness, usually will come suddenly or will it be linear progression? So the understanding, now we call it understanding because we are limited by words, but this is not an understanding in time. So the understanding happens spontaneously. It's like the truth is, or whatever you want to call it, it's just glimpsed instantly. But afterwards, there is a linear progression to full realization of that. And I can just share my own experience, which is that when this understanding hit me, I realized to great depths that there is no separation between pain and pleasure. That everything, every desire that comes in pursuit of pleasure is accompanied with an equal amount of pain. anything in the world without exception. So there is no breaking that duality in this world, in this life. Life comes as a mixed bag, pain and pleasure together. And as that understanding got deeper in time through that linear progression, it was understood that what we feel as pleasure is also pain in disguise. What we think of pleasure is actually pain in disguise. And Nisargadatta Maharaj said that background of every pleasure is pain. It's like when they explain in the Zen teachings, a feather touch feels very calming. But if you increase the pressure of let's say the feather is pointy, and if you increase the pressure, the same pleasure becomes pain. So, whether you experience a pleasurable sensation or a painful sensation on the hand depends on the pressure of the feather. But you see, there is no separation between pain and pleasure. So, that was my experience. And, when one has that glimpse into reality, one starts. One stops looking for solutions as such to life's problems, because it is understood that every problem has this construct. So every answer will also have this construct of pleasure and pain. There is no separation between the two. And there is a quote by Nisargadatta Maharaj in his book I Am That, where he says that the river of my life flows between the banks of pain and pleasure, but I cling to none. Neither do I cling to pleasure, nor do I cling to pain. So I sail effortlessly. So, which summarizes very beautifully. So, yes, there is a linear progression which is involved, which Ramesh Balsekar called deliverance. Now, the extent to which this, or the depth to which this pure consciousness is realized, is individual's destiny. But even a glimpse changes a lot of things. The sudden the sudden witnessing of pure consciousness does not solve anything as such. It just breaks the illusory constructs that we have formed over time. So people think that spiritual awakening, as they call it, I like to use the word insight, but they call it spiritual awakening, which is okay, that it brings lot of bliss, that it removes all the pain from life, which is not true actually. In fact, witnessing of this puts one on a roller coaster ride, which is a part of the linear progression. And there is a period where one experiences highs of highs and the lows of lows, which is also traditionally called as the dark night of the soul. A period marked by intense confusion and intense conflict. And that is why seeking is at its peak at that time. But when it is understood that pleasure and pain cannot be separated, and the nature of desire, which is born out of thought, is dualistic, then one simply follows what arises, what happens. So one does not get concerned or caught up with either pain or pleasure. So if pain is arising in the moment, one accepts the pain. If pleasure is arising in the moment, one completely accepts the pleasure as well. And that was my understanding. So I hope that answers the question. Hello, Neeraj. Please feel free to ask anything. Thank you. Thank you, Kanda. Aman, I hope I answered your question. If I have not, please feel free to ask. I will try to make these live sessions a regular feature every Sunday. Although I say that every time, but every time something or the other happens, and I have to accept sometimes the flow of life. But I will try to be as regular as possible. I'm very bad at this, to be honest. I don't like to stick to schedules. That is my conditioning. Hi, hi, Fuba Sherpa. Hello. Okay, Ankit asks, why does consciousness need to experience itself? Or why does it limit itself? You see, this question goes back to why does the universe exist? It goes back to why the creation happens. And the best answer, you know, which may not satisfy your curiosity, but still the best that I have come across is that we can never know why the consciousness limit itself. But only by limiting itself is the experience possible. You see, if the consciousness does not limit itself and stays in its infinite state, then no experience would be possible, no movement would be possible. An example would be like, if a bottle is filled with sand, then there can be no movement within the bottle. If it's completely filled with sand up to the brim, without any space, then you can never know the movement of sand inside the bottle. So what you have to do is just remove little bit of sand from the bottle. Then the glass is half filled. So when the glass is half filled, the sand has limited itself and then it can move and then the movement is seen. Now, it is not a very convincing example, but that is what it is. That is what uh, only by limiting can one become two. But the one becomes two, but it is not separate. It is still one. So, Huba Sherpa says, would you please share your struggle and experience before awakening experience? Thank you. Thank you, Huba. So, I don't even call it struggle anymore. It was like I was on a conventional path, you know. I have worked in the corporate industry for over a decade, and I was the usual materialistic guy who was looking for pleasures in life and trying to trying to buy happiness by acquiring more money, fulfilling relationships, climbing top position in the corporate world. And I don't say that any of that is bad, but at some point it just hit me that none of these things will ever help me. And as I discussed earlier, that the pain comes attached with pleasure. So whatever we are seeking in pursuit of pleasure cannot that cannot be separated from pain. So pain and pleasure are actually one. So yeah, that's the experience. Of course, if you have read article on my website about my, it's already there, where I have spoken in more depth about my father's death and how that was a catalyst for me to explore life and explore death, what is beyond death, and then that started a frenzy of this seeking and trying to get the answers. And finally, at some point, the seeking ended, and I was content with whatever I know or I don't know. And my greatest insight was that I don't know anything as such. I still maintain that I don't know much. So Ankit says, thank you for your guidance. I love listening to you. Thank you, Ankit. Thank you for that generous comment. So Neeraj says, my self-awareness meditations are effective. While I do while I do lone walk rather than sitting and doing. That is perfectly fine, Neeraj. In fact, I don't sit and meditate at all. I mean, very rarely do I sit and meditate. My meditation, the practice that I have come up with is based on walking. I walk slow and I'm just completely present with myself, and I let whatever is arising, I allow simply whatever is arising. And there is no hard and fast rule as to how I have to conduct my breath, uh, or how long do I have to do it. There is no condition for me. There are no conditions in meditation. So I think walking meditations are extremely helpful, and I know a lot of people who do walking meditations. In fact, Ramesh said in one of his satsang that he would walk continuously for hours in his house. Of course, he was speaking about his time when he was old. So at that time, he had to walk to keep himself, to keep his fitness levels up. But at the same time, he would do japa while he was walking. And he used to notice all this. He would say that, at time walking was happening, at time japa was happening, and there was a time when japa stopped, there was a time when walking stopped, and there was a time when sitting happened. so so it is perfectly fine. There is no need to sit as such for meditation. Although to each its own, there are some people who prefer sitting, so that's fine with them. Sometimes I prefer sitting as well. Okay, so Ankit says, is there a journey of soul where we eventually realize we are the consciousness itself? Do we keep taking births unless we realize that? I'll be very honest with you, Ankit. I don't really know. I don't really know whether whether that realization will stop the next birth or not. But I do know that the realization that we are pure consciousness puts an end to this question. It puts an end even to the pain of the possibility of having a next birth, because you are completely free of the karma. It is only karma that you are scared of. And that is why you don't want to take birth again and again. Because you feel that this entity which is continuing here is experiencing pain. You are aware of your pain. And what scares you is the possibility that in your next birth, the same cycle may continue and you may experience pain again, continuously till the end of time. And a lot of religious concepts say that, the cycle of samsara, dukkha, birth, rebirth, keeps the entity trapped. So, realization of consciousness is that you are free of all that. So, you will be happy even if the birth happens, even if something materializes, if the body materializes, it will be inconsequential to you, because you are the awareness and not the body. You are the one that is witnessing all of this, the birth, rebirth, death. You are the witness of that. So, realization of that is not an intellectual realization. That is why I say it is the realization of the heart, where the heart completely surrenders to whatever is happening. So, Puba says, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, please forgive me for that. It is said that we have to go beyond our conceptual mind to come to your true nature. However, to live in this world, we are required to use logical and conceptual mind all the time to function. Would you please explain how can we function and make decision without using the logical and conceptual mind? Well, you have to use the logical and conceptual mind to make a decision. That is why it is there. That is why it is given. But that said, the problem with us is that we are using only logic and only concepts to make decisions. Sometimes using pure logic to arrive at a decision may give you the result that you want, but it may not bring you the happiness that you desire. If you understand what I'm saying, when we tune into our own energy, when we go deep within our own being, with that, there is a reduction in the activity of the brain. So the conceptual and logical mind becomes sharp, but at the same time, it is not everything. There are other faculties which gives rise to the emotional and the intuitive concept and the intuitive faculties as well. So then we start taking decisions from the heart and use the mind only as a tool, as a vehicle to make the decision. But beyond that is the power of the heart. So you see, for heart, everything is acceptable. Heart does not discriminate between right decision or wrong decision. Heart completely surrenders to whatever is the outcome. So when we accept that the outcome is not in our control, we simply act based on our present knowledge. So we use the conceptual mind, but we don't overuse it. That's the only difference. We don't get lost into concepts or fantasies. We are completely aware and tuned into our, so as to speak, highest vibration. In that, sometimes, we don't even have to make a decision. The decisions simply happen. Okay, Ankit says, I have been listening to Jiddu Krishnamurti, and he says that introduction of thought in our consciousness created this separate entity which is responsible for all the pain and pleasure. Yes, it is true. Would you say introduction of thought was inevitable? Of course, without, see, thought in itself, thought is divisive and thought is limited. That is for sure. But at the same time, thought is required for daily functioning. Thought is required for movement. Thought is the movement. Without thought, nothing is possible. So, even your asking this question has been made possible by thought. So, thought in itself is not is not evil or undesirable. And the masters are not saying that the thought is the problem. The masters is saying that only identification with thought and only limiting yourself to thought is the problem. So, limiting yourself to a conceptual thought that is me and saying that me is the only reality, we create the separate entity. That is when we start finding security for this me, and the whole movement begins to to secure this me. And the nature of me is unpredictability. The nature of me is suffering. It is never going to be satisfied. You get the best job, you get money, the best relationships, everything best in life you get, still this me is not going to be satisfied. It is just going to be restless because that is its nature. So, me is the conceptual thought that creates this separation. But me is required because without me, communication is also not possible. So, right now, me, Jagjot, is speaking to you. Without me, this correspondence, this interaction would not be possible. And that is perhaps why the consciousness created this movement. Or let's say, consciousness created the duality. Ramesh would say that the one became many because so that one became many so that life as we know could happen. So that life as we know could happen. It is only that we choose to identify with a certain set of thoughts and choose to re- um choose to repel other thoughts that creates this dichotomy, which kinds of gets us trapped in the world and brings suffering. So Ankit says, was there a possibility ever for mankind to not have identified with thought? I am interested in knowing, if possible, how did we get into this rabbit hole? So Ankit, you see, you are not going to figure this out that easily, because trying to figure this out is trying to say that I want to decode the cosmic law, that I want to know how the consciousness works. And you see, it is your mind which is trying to know that. The mind is trying to find a solution because mind is trying to avoid something. And it says, the mind says that once I know this, once I know how mankind is trapped in this rabbit hole, maybe there is a possibility. And we are trying to rely again on thought to get answer to that. So our investigation and the tool is also thought, and which is okay, which is perfectly fine. I would say that yes, there is always a possibility. There is always a possibility, and the possibility is simply here and now. It is not that it is a function of time. Jittu Krishnamurti said that there is no time, there is no psychological time. Jiddu Krishnamurti would speak about measure, and the measure is that distance. I am this and I want to become that. So there is a measure. I don't know, I want to know. There is a measure. I am less, I want to become more. There is a measure. And he says, the moment you drop that measure, that is where the possibility happens. It's so interesting to see how mind creates these entanglements. It wants to know, but it doesn't even know what it is. And it wants to know. But it is fine. All these questions, all these introspections, they are perfectly fine and they should be done. My personal experience has been that it is the grace of the source or God, whatever you want to call it, when the mind reverts on itself. The mind reverting on itself is that it stops looking for solutions in concepts in the outer worlds, but it just goes deep into its own nature, which Ramana Maharishi dubbed as "Who am I?" the self-inquiry. When that happens, that is usually the end of it, and the end of it is the is the invocation of the consciousness, the pure consciousness. So Shubha Puba says, "What is your view on soul purpose? Do you believe that every soul has a specific purpose in this human realm?" I do believe that we all are, we all have our purpose, but there is no specific purpose. There is no such thing as a specific purpose. The purpose keeps changing. And, if you see the entire cycle, from beginning to end, from birth to death of a human being, the purpose keeps changing. As a child, the purpose is different based on the consciousness of the child, based on the on the intellect of the child. When the child becomes a teenager, the purpose again changes. Again, based on the limited filters the teenager has. The teenager may want to become a rock star, or may want to become an actor, or maybe not even that. Maybe they may just want to become a driver, or something else, or get a job in an MNC, in a corporate world. That may be their only dream. That was my dream. And I thought that was my purpose in life. And I thought that that's what I'm going to do. And then something else happened, and a completely different path was laid out. Today I am on that path, following the instructions. As I grow old, maybe something else happens. So there is no specific purpose as such. And even if there is, that our mind cannot grasp the immensity of that purpose. So that's why, the masters say that whatever you think is best for you in the moment, act on that. Because life is all about action. It is not about inaction. Act on whatever you think is best for you in a given moment and leave the rest. So Vidhi says, again, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. I am Vidhi, resonate with the metaphor of God is playing hide and seek on himself. At this very moment, God is seeking. Otherwise, why am I sitting here now and enjoying your talk and happy and peaceful mood? Of course, God is seeking, God is typing, God is speaking, God is seeking, and God is speaking. There is no separation, because it is all happening here now. So yes, your metaphor is perfect. These are just movements. Seeking is a movement, speaking is a movement, talking is a movement. It's all movement, but every movement is brought about by stillness. It's not separate from the stillness. At every point, there is stillness, like, frames of a movie. Every frame is a still, but it appears as movement. Beautiful. So I think we can conclude our talk for today. As it is Sunday, and I don't want to hold you all here. I wish you all a lot of love and lot of peace, and I will see you soon. Take care.